Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Patrick McFarland. This one is episode 210. Show notes may be found at libertyweekly.net/210. And on the line, I have Alan Mosley. Alan, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty well, Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and I've been meaning to get you on the show for a long-ass time. I've known you for a few years now, and it was not until like 6 months ago that I came on It's Too Late.
Mm-hmm.
So, I heard about you on the Tom Woods show in like 2017 or something like that. So, this is your first time on my show, but why don't you tell the audience about yourself and about your show?
Sure. Well, I am the host of It's Too Late with Alan Mosley, which new episodes premiere every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's Too Late is styled as a late night show. So it's the classic late night genre, starting with a nice, cool little jazz big band intro, monologue, desk. We have guests, we have music, we have fun. It's not a libertarian podcast, and I want to stress to people, look, I've done a libertarian podcast before. It was called The Gold Standard, and we had a lot of great guests, and we talked about a lot of really important subjects. But my thing is that, every time there's a hurricane and everyone wants to regurgitate their articles about price gouging, you can only do that so many times before you're like, it's been done. We've talked about price gouging. We've talked about taxation as theft. We've done all those things. And in the new show, honestly, we really try to avoid those labels entirely. We really don't say things like libertarian, anarchist, ANCAP, voluntarist. We try to avoid it as much as possible because at the end of the day, Patrick, my philosophy has been, instead of trying to make a great libertarian show, maybe make a great show. And when people look back, they'll say, hey, that's a great show. Isn't it really cool that one of us does that? Like, isn't it cool that a libertarian does this? Like, I don't want to make a libertarian NFL team, right? But it would be cool if there was a libertarian that was like number one in the league in touchdowns or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I always feel like, in the past few shows that I've done, there was a moment in time where I looked back. I think it was after, because I did a year-long hiatus, and I think it was after I came back, I kind of had a point of reflection, and I was like, holy shit, like, I'm an old guy now in this space. Like, I'm not an old guy in terms of, but I've been doing this for, I don't know, 5-6 years now, and I totally relate to that sentiment, because when I started my show, I did the NAP, I did thick versus thin libertarianism, I did the border debate, I hit up all those topics. And like at a certain point, I just kind of got tired of talking about it. And it's nice because, it's a growing movement. A lot of people come in, they're excited. They go through what I called the evangelical phase. My old host called it that, and I just really like that phrase. And you just kind of burn out on it, and then you want to talk about other stuff. Because you're right, you can only have the same conversations over and over again.
Well, there's a phrase that I know all of us have heard many, many times. This is you go to a random libertarian group or a popular profile, and someone will post a question, or maybe they'll link to an article, something going on in the world, and the same question always lands. Hey, guys, what's the libertarian position on this?
Right, yeah.
And I always hated that question. Because for one, it's that, well, if you don't know, maybe you should take libertarian out of your profile because you don't know. You're not informed enough. Like if you say, hey, what's the libertarian position on this? And it's Madeleine Albright talking about dead Iraqi children. It's like, well, it's not good. It's bad. That's the libertarian position.
We're against that.
Yeah, we're against that. You should have been able to sell those children, not kill them.
Right. Yes.
But anyway, but beyond that, it's that I kind of reached a point where I was like, I don't think anyone, definitely not me, but I'm not sure anyone is qualified to be the person who explains the libertarian position on things.
Right.
Like it's a philosophy. It's a belief system. It's, and it's rooted in a lot of intellectualism. But Murray Rothbard's not here. I'm not the person who's going to answer for libertarianism what our stance is. I mean, if anything, that kind of sounds collectivist, and I think we're anti-collectivist. I've always felt like there was definitely some collectivist undertones to going into a group and saying, "Hey guys, what's our
What do we
position
think
on
about
this?"
this? Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of comes off as a little cultish.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't like that. I want to avoid that. Um, and so what I do is I tell people, well, these are my positions, and I'm a libertarian, and you can take it or leave it. If you have a different position and you have a justification for it, then good on you. But I'm not. I don't have the. I mean, I'm a pretty arrogant POS, but I don't have. I don't have a big enough ego to say, hey, Patrick, let me learn you something, son. This is the libertarian position on this.
Right.
Go tell all your friends. That's not me.
Well, and I don't want to, throw too much shade on people who are new to the movement, and, people who have started podcasts who do want to talk about the NAP. I've been there, I've done that. And people were there and did that before I came in. But I just think at this point in our careers and space and time in this space, it's just like, okay, well, I want to talk about, foreign policy has been my focus lately, but, What are some of the things? I mean, so you do some current events kind of stuff too, and dip into some entertainment?
Yeah, so I mean, my degrees are in history. I was a big history guy, and I did some writing, and and I got a number of articles published on the usual platforms that one might expect. Mises, Lou Rockwell, Fee, the Libertarian Institute has published a thing or two that I've written, and I'm very grateful for that. But again, it's that like, well, so much of that is centered in, let's take one of these, big underlying core principles that we have, and we're applying it to something, and let's write about it. And you kind of reach a point where like, not only has it been done, but it's been done well. Like there's some great folks out there who have done some great work on a lot of these big topics, like big picture type stuff. And it's like, well, I don't really have anything to add to that. I don't feel like I have anything I can say that Scott Horton hasn't already said way better that's going to convince someone that war is bad.
Right.
Like
yeah.
just go listen to Scott. But when it comes to things like current events and news or even in pop culture and entertainment, it's that, well, maybe I can share my perspective on some of these things. And maybe instead of trying to tell, like, again, and trying to tell people what the position is maybe that I'll tell you my position. And maybe it'll serve, talking about, because you had brought up like new people in the space, right? Like younger people who are just finding some of these ideas for the first time. And sometimes I kind of think of myself as, well, if you trust me, if you feel like I have enough credibility that I'm worthy of your trust and respect, then maybe I can shed some light on something going on in the world, and you can and maybe it's kind of helps to build up your own defenses against what some of the mainstream narratives are. I think you and I probably both agree wholeheartedly that if something just happened in the world 15 seconds ago, CNN is good for telling you that it happened. Sometimes it's good for telling you that it physically happened. But the longer you listen to it, the more you're going to get a colored representation of what happened, as opposed to just that it happened. And maybe that's a place for us to fill. Maybe that's a space where old fogies like us can exist, is to tell people, yeah, that thing happened, but that's really the only valuable information you got from CNN was that it happened. Now let me tell you why it's not the end of the world, why the sky's not falling, or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe one way or the other. Maybe there's definitely things. If it's going to be nuclear war with Russia, then I think that's something you need to take pretty seriously. Versus if it's, inflation, then it's certainly not transitory and it's not created by something that just happened a few weeks ago. So I don't know. Maybe that's a place for us to exist. But I will definitely end on this note. Whether even if it's sports or entertainment or music or whatever, is that, God, there's just so much more to life than no matter how beautiful or poetic or logically consistent your system of beliefs are, there's more to life than whatever that is.
Hell yeah. And I had a bit of a reflection. I don't know if it was like year 2 or 3 into this kind of space, just about, the reason why I hate the LGBT agenda is because many people that I know that are in that space, their identity is derived from their sexuality. And that is like, I literally couldn't give two shits if you're gay or not. But if you are gay, see what I did there? If you are gay, then I just don't find much very interesting about that. And I was like, oh, wait a second. Is that me in libertarianism?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So exactly right. Is that if the analogy I used recently was like, how you ever watch an old episode of Wheel of Fortune, and after like that first initial puzzle, they'll do the quick go around of, hey, guess 1, 2, and 3. Tell me your name, where you're from. Tell me something interesting about you. Make it 30 seconds long. Boom,
Right,
go. And I mean, because it's network TV, right? So it's just snap, snap, go, 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 go. And if those people always say, hey, I'm Alan, I'm from Columbia, Tennessee, and I like turtles, whatever, or I play jazz music, or, I host a podcast, whatever. That fits. But if you saw somebody, like, could you imagine one of those guests saying, hi, I'm Nancy, I'm 32 years old, and I'm a Republican.
Right. Yeah.
You would cringe. Even if you were also a Republican, you'd be like, oh, that's who you are. That's who you are, is you're a Republican. You're not a mother. You're not, or a father. You're not a musician. You're not a someone who's working on some sort of great project. You don't, you're not like, say they're doing their shows in Dallas, or I'm a Cowboys fan. Well, I would accept that a lot more than I would accept I'm a Democrat or I'm a libertarian. I'd be like, oh God, that would, if I had someone on my show and the first thing, and if I said, hey, Patrick, introduce yourself to my audience. You said, I'm Patrick, I'm 35, and I'm a libertarian. I'd be like, all right, well, guys, that's all the time we have today. Patrick, tell them where they can follow you. I'm sorry, I would cringe.
Yeah. And I have a show about the non-aggression principle. No, on a serious note though, like I thought about rebranding a few times because my show is called Liberty Weekly. And when I started it just literally, I mean, the title of the show is just Liberty, and weekly is just a description of how often you get it.
Yeah.
So like, but I thought about, should I rebrand to something that's not explicitly liberty? Like, because I think of like a lot of the shows that are kind of bigger. It's like, well, your show is It's Too Late. I love that title. And Dave Smith's show is Part of the Problem. And Tom Wood's show is Tom Wood's show. And Scott Horton's show is Scott Horton's show. So it's not just like, hey, this is a liberty podcast. But it's like, the sunk cost kind of thing we were talking about before we hit the record button. It's like, well, what do I do now? I've stunk, 5 years into Liberty Weekly. That's kind of what I am.
Well, I will say this. If you shouldn't, it's kind of like, I love making sports analogies because we're not neckbeard libertarians. We can enjoy things in the world. Is that every you ever heard the phrase, the backup QB is always the most popular guy in the locker room? Like, because if it's a losing team, everyone wants to replace the starter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, if the age old wisdom there is that if you don't have someone to replace him with, then you shouldn't replace him. And so I would apply that here and say, if you had a really awesome idea for a brand, then you should pull the trigger. But if you don't already have a really awesome idea, then why would you force it? Why would you?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of are you changing to something or from something? Are you changing to something awesome or from Liberty Weekly?
That's a great point. Yeah. I had this idea, like my Substack column it's called What They're Not Telling You. I don't know if that translates to a podcast name or something, but I mean, it's not explicitly libertarian, that's maybe the best thing about it, but.
Well, the thing like for us was like when we were sitting, or I had made the decision first that I'm going to change to a late night show, and we're going to start doing jokes and funny graphics. We're going to have a great old time. I had made that decision from a programming standpoint first. And then after having made that decision, it was, okay, what's it going to be called?
Yeah.
And for us, it was trying to come up with a name that, as you would say, is not explicitly a particular niche audience or brand. that you know it's a late night show, that it comes off that way. But also that it kind of fits me and people who know me, knowing the black-hearted, cynical person that I am, because I'm always the one that's telling people, you know, like who cares? It's too late at this point.
Late.
Yeah, it's too late. And so we can't. So it's too late. And of course, you know, late night shows are on late at night, and a lot of people don't watch them because they're on too late. So it's too late. And for people that have seen my logo, it's the moon, but the moon has got a clock on it, and it's the atomic clock. Like, you know, it's past midnight, so we're getting ready for a nuclear war.
Oh, okay. I didn't make that connection, but yeah, it's awesome.
Can you see it right now?
I can. Yeah.
It's the atomic clock on the back of the moon.
Here,
right
hold it up if you would for the camera.
Let me see if I can.
Well, you have the cup right next to you.
Oh yeah, the cup. Yeah, let me pull that back up. Yeah, the cup right here. It's too late. So it's a clock. So it's going by time. It's going by the fact that it's late night, and you know, it's not completely apolitical because you see the atomic clock there on the moon. Yeah. And of course, me being me is that if it's too late, then it can't be at midnight. The minute hand is past midnight. Yeah. No, it's cool. So that was, I mean, yeah, that's the highlight of the program right there. It's all downhill from coming up with a cool name.
Well, and I thought if I did what they're not telling you, then it would be more of a description of what I've been trying to cover. Right? Is like, you know. See, like Justin Raimondo did Behind the Headlines. It's kind of like that. Yeah. Doing investigations of stuff and trying to get to the bottom of it, I guess. So. Yeah, exactly.
Well, like even of the few people that you mentioned is that, so like with Dave doing Part of the Problem. So he went with the example of like a popular turn of phrase. And then, of course, there's something like the Tom Woods Show, which is pretty obviously cut and dry. You are the brand. You put your name on it. And so, you know, there's definitely different ways of going about it. I lean towards wanting to have like a cool, funny turn of phrase, like, you know, kind of the wordplay in there, I think is kind of fun. So I don't know. I guess all I would, you know, we're sitting here like we're just sort of kind of spitballing here live on air, is that I think that if you do have a fun idea, and you feel like it's something that really represents you more, and you're trying to avoid being labeled as, oh, that's Patrick, he's a libertarian,
right? Yeah.
Then do it. Don't worry so much about the sunken costs, because really at the end of the day, I feel like the people that know you and love you are going to be there the next day for your new gig, your new show, your new brand, and if they weren't going to, or if they didn't know you, then what difference does it make if it's still Liberty Weekly? If they weren't already following you, then they're not following you. Maybe they'll follow what they're not telling you when they didn't follow Liberty Weekly. That's the whole point, right?
Right. Yeah, maybe. And I guess it's not being allergic to libertarianism as much as it is just trying to reach a wider net kind of thing. Because you know how there's always the joke about how saturated the field is and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, no, you know, and like, because I see you there wearing your AntiWar.com hat, and you were telling me earlier that you like AntiWar.com is not Libertarian Antiwar.com, it's AntiWar.com, and there's a lot of, you know, libertarians should be good on war. I used to tell people we were the best on war. Now I tell people we should be the best on war. Yeah. An important distinction. But there's lots of people there's lots of apolitical people who aren't particularly partisan, who are anti-war. There's you know, look at some of these polls that have been coming out recently about how the wealthier and more affluent the community, the more they think we should be intervening in Eastern Europe. Right. The less wealthy and less affluent the community, the less they want to intervene. Of course, obviously, the indication there is, well, it's because you're going to send me to go fight in the damn war, right?
Right.
They're not. You know, George Bush doesn't have to go to Vietnam, but you and me, we're on the plane. So, you know, I really get that. And I really get that, so that there's a market there to talk about those things. Whereas the type of people that don't listen to Democrats and don't listen to Republicans because they think that they're just politicians, they might feel the same way about libertarians. But if you approach them from, hey, buddy, you're really against this war crap, right? Let's talk about that. Then they'll listen to you. And I think they should. I mean, I'm your friend, and so maybe I'm a little biased, but I think they should be listening to you. So, Give them a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I wear this hat around town. For those of you who are just listening, I made this on Etsy. Like when I made this, it wasn't Etsy, it was something else, but I copped the logo and I put it on, and then I donated $20 to AntiWar.com because I stole their shit. But I wear it around town, you know, usually when I go out and about. I also wear like a Glock t-shirt or like my Smith & Wesson t-shirt because I live in a really small conservative town, and it's like I just don't want people. I mean, like I think I went with my son to the grocery store the other day, and I heard some guy say something about like Democrats or something, and of course I assumed he was talking about me, but I wanted to say something like, motherfucker, like I bet you I'm more conservative than you are. Like
Yeah. Well, I mean, I live down here in southern Middle Tennessee, south of Nashville, and of course this is, in a lot of ways it's neocon central. I mean, these are the kind of red rural communities and red states that are going to vote for every Bush that chooses to seek office, that would vote for a McCain, that would vote for even a Romney for that matter. And it's tough because you have that flavor of like old school South, you know, missing the Confederacy.
yeah,
Don't salute the flag because that ain't my flag type redneck. You've got some of those around here, and you can talk to them because they're not in the bag for whatever the man on TV is preaching. They're not in the bag for that. On the other hand, maybe they don't really know where they stand. Like they're definitely the people who are going to vote right wing because they know they're not left wing. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're good practicing conservatives. They just know that they're not left wing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's a start, right? Like that's at least something you can work with. I can work with someone who says, well, I don't know what I am, but I ain't no damn commie Democrat. You know, I can work with that person more than I can work with someone who says, oh, but I know that I'm a hardcore Mitt Romney sycophant.
Right,
well, if you know that, then I can't work with you. Right.
Yeah. No, it is. So is that close to Oak Ridge where you're at?
Oh, so that's in East Tennessee. They're going to get nuked. They're done.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Well, so hopefully I'll avoid the nuclear fallout from that.
Yeah.
So I'm in Columbia, Tennessee, which is straight down I-65, straight south of Nashville in Middle Tennessee. It's the mule capital of the world, and it's also the home of James K. Polk.
Oh,
President Polk. Yeah.
interesting.
So we're statists too. You see.
Yeah.
We worship his house.
Well, I'm trying to think of, I like Wisconsin a lot. It's where I grew up and all that. It's where I live still, but yeah, the kind of a checkered history with, it's been a swing state historically, but historically there's a lot of German socialism that goes on around here. It was actually like a conduit for the German socialist planning back in the progressive era.
Well, so here they actually not that long ago, just a few years ago, opened the Confederate Museum. So there is a Confederate Museum now, and it's located here in Murray County, Tennessee.
Oh, really? Okay.
And directly. So if you drive any further south, because you don't want to drive too much further south, because then you're in Alabama and you might as well kiss your ass goodbye at that point. But if you drive a little bit further south, you'll get to a little hole in the wall named Giles County, where there's nothing there. There's nothing there at all but a place called Pulaski, which was the birthplace, of course, of the KKK. So that's right down the road from me. So just give your listeners an idea of what part of the country I'm from. So we birthed mules, the KKK, and James K. Polk. And this is definitely the part of the country where historians like us might make the argument that, the Civil War wasn't really about slavery, you guys. It was about, states' rights and this, that, and the other.
Right.
That's actually a very popular concept where I'm from, because they all fought in the fucking Confederacy.
Right.
where I'm from. So that's a very popular, but again, like it's like we're laughing about that, but I can work with them though, right?
Right.
Like
exactly,
they're at least open to the idea that what they're teaching in school isn't exactly the whole story. They're at least open to the idea that what they're hearing on TV isn't the whole story. And and maybe it's not such a bad thing that they're open to the idea of, well, I identify more with where I'm from locally than I do where I'm from nationally. I can. I mean, they're all a bunch of crazy rednecks, but by God, they'll be the ones that'll keep me alive when shit hits the
Well,
fan. So
right.
I can work with these people.
Yeah. No, there was a reason why I moved back to the town I went to high school in, because it's 4,000 people, and it's not uncommon here for people to buy beef from the local farmer, or like buy
Yeah.
eggs from somebody or something like that. So yeah, and it's crazy with how nuts things have gone. And then this is airing a week. This will be airing a week after we're recording it right now. So 2 days ago, Biden said to expect food shortages.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Uh,
yeah.
It's something I used to tell people. Like this is going to be a really weird, random segue. How do you feel about the whole collapsitarian people?
I don't know. Like, here's a funny anecdote about it. Just, I remember my dad went on Twitter, and I think he was looking at my stuff, and he found the collapsitarian hashtag, and he must have explored it or something, because he had like a serious concern. He was like, who are you associating yourselves with? Like, worried about getting in some kind of trouble with the feds or something like that. I see a lot of overlap in some of them with certain, I don't know, GOP sentiments. I don't know if you.
Well, the reason I bring that up is that you can understand where people come from while still rebuking them, but I feel like it's important to do, if you're going to do the latter, you should also do the former. And I totally can understand the collapsitarian view of, if I think that we're way more likely to reach the type of free society we want to live in, but that will only happen after the society we currently live in collapses under the weight of its own empire, then I can understand the attractiveness of a concept like collapsitarianism. But I rebuke those people because I think that those people severely underestimate just how terrible that's going to be.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Like when you hear things like Biden saying, "Oh yeah, well, Russians not exporting the same amount of fertilizer as they would have been, so we're going to have some food shortages." Like, you don't realize how fragile the global economy, how shipping and exporting, like it's one of those things where, on the one hand, it's like, isn't the free market beautiful how it works, and how even despite all the regulation and tax and control, it still provides so much plenty for us.
Right.
And we're able to sit here and have ridiculous conversations like we're having now, and we're not going to go to bed hungry. And yet it also doesn't take much, and all of a sudden we're talking about food shortages.
Yeah.
It doesn't like, if the guy on the news says people are starting to sneeze, all of a sudden you can't get toilet paper anymore, right? Like, it's impressive, but also fragile. And I don't want that for people. Like, it's gonna be bad. A lot of people are gonna lose a lot of people are gonna suffer, and I don't want that for people. I don't like it. I feel like it's important that if you're going to be one of these people that strongly advocates for the end of the status quo, you should also have a great amount of sympathy for the fact that ending the status quo will be bad for Nancy Pelosi, but it's going to be bad for you and me too.
Yeah.
At least for a while.
I hope it's like, remember when Biden said that we were going to have a dark winter?
Yeah, of illness and death. Yeah.
I hope it's like that. The food shortages he's talking about, I hope it's like the dark winter that we had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do worry. One thing I think about often, and I think I've mentioned this on the show, so apologies if I'm like repeating myself, but I just sometimes stop and think about like how great it is to live through history like this, like through a really historical time. And I don't mean great in the sense of wonderful and awesome, but awesome, I maybe in the original sense of the word awesome, like the sheer weight of history, I think, is really interesting, and what a privilege it is to be able to have my voice be heard at that time, and to bear witness to it. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, as much as the last couple of years have been really shitty for a lot of people, I've made it very clear on my own program, like when the lockdowns first happened, the first part of 2020. I mean, I lost like 85% of my income. So the even though we do this slapstick, ridiculous show that we do, my old producer and I, Blake, ran a studio and did a lot of events. We did a lot of audio video for events, for concerts, things like that. We rented a space for private functions and whatnot, and we ran a studio. And it's, of course, it's gone. It did not survive, but it isn't just our own private place that didn't survive. We made the majority of our money going out and doing, bringing, packing up the van and doing a lot of audio video stuff for other people's events, for benefit concerts, for things like that. And they're all gone. They're all gone, and they're not coming back. Like I don't feel like people have really reckoned with that yet. I think I'll give you a perfect example. Most people have heard of the Relay for Life. I think it's the United Way. I could be wrong on that. That does the Relay for Life, and with a lot of those, it's your own local towns and counties that do that. Like, you've got your local volunteers, and they'll get some materials from the national group, but your local volunteers put on that event. And we were doing our services for the Relays for Life for like basically the whole mid-state area. And they were canceled in 2020, but they didn't come back in 2021 because most of those committees have just folded. It kind of goes back to that whole just fragility thing that you think of a lot of small businesses. We know a lot of small businesses went out of business, but people don't understand. They didn't just go out of business because the economy took a downturn and there was some lockdowns. It's because a lot of these small businesses, do we want to be living week to week or month to month? Of course we don't. But you know what? A lot of businesses are tough, and a lot of margins are very short. There's a lot of businesses. You think of like you think of entertainment. You think of like the restaurant industry, where profit margins are razor thin. If profit margins are razor thin, and they got to have a packed house every weekend to make a few bucks, what's going to happen when they close for 6 months? It's totally predictable what took place. Everyone's going to go out of freaking business, and you're going to have a lot more people supportive of stimulus checks, not because it's the right thing, but because they're thinking, well, where the hell's my money? You people stole that from me. Right. I had a job. I didn't need a stimulus check, but you took my job from me, and so now you owe me, and they're more willing to take, whereas before they wouldn't have. And kind of going back to the sympathy thing, I sympathize with that. I feel like it's so short-sighted for people like us to yell at people on social media and say, "Oh yeah, collect your stimmy check, you sheep." It's like, well, they had a job, they lost their fucking job because the politicians shut their business down. What do you expect from these people? Like, have a little bit of humility and sympathy for people that are going through a tough time. But kind of bringing that full circle is that, on the one hand, isn't it amazing that we live in a time where, despite the hardships, we still live relatively comfortably? Like, we're not going out and working the back 40 so we could eat tonight, you and I, like we live in a wonder. I always make the joke on the show that everyone who ever puts on their rosy colored glasses and says, "Oh, I wish I could go back to whatever," every single one of them are lying. Even if they think they're not, they are. No one wants to go back in time. Are you kidding me? Every new day is the best time to be alive, just because of the wonders of the earth and everyone and everything in it. But again, at the same time, isn't it also horrifying how quickly those things can fall apart because of a little mandate here, a little tax there, a little international kerfuffle on this side of the world or the other, and all of a sudden you can't find what you're looking for at the store. And that might be one little thing for you today. I hope you're right. I hope that Biden's naysay is just hot air. But I also know that this is kind of like coming back to back with some other world events that we're none too pleased about. And it makes you wonder, God, how many more things like this can we suffer before times do start to get noticeably more difficult?
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to the portion of the show where I tell you how you can help support this content. As many of you know, I am part of the Libertarian Institute alongside of my colleagues there. Scott Horton is our director. We just added Keith Knight to the masthead. He is the managing editor of the Institute now. We've also added Will Porter and Connor Freeman as part of our team over at the Institute. We're so excited about all the work that we're doing. Kyle and Will are doing daily news stories, like really hard-hitting news. And if you want to know what's going on in Ukraine and in foreign policy wise, but also domestic stuff, there's really hard-hitting news that they're doing. They put out 40 or 50 news articles this month, and this is the first month that they've been doing it. It might even be 3 weeks that they've been doing it. So they're just on pace, really killing it with really good content. I've stepped up my game. I'm writing a whole lot more. Connor is going to step up his game and be contributing articles a lot more. Keith has a new book coming out. So we have so much going on, and we really depend on your support in order to do all those things and to expand our coverage and reach and content. And so we've been doing it for a few days now. We have about $5,000 of our $60,000 goal raised. So there's a long way to go, and we really need your help in order to get there. So if you just want to support me, however, I've been featuring my Substack lately, What They're Not Telling You. I've been putting out content every day. I've been putting out content every day for the last week or so, and I hope to continue that trend, but I'm shooting for at least every other day. But I am putting free content out. I'm also putting paid content out, premium content that you won't get anywhere else. And a lot of that has been running my articles early, and giving you early access to those articles and to my episodes. But there are free posts there, and there's complete bonus episodes of the Liberty Weekly podcast that you can find, libertyweekly.net/Substack. I would encourage you to join just the free list and see, like, even the paid content has previews that comes out. So you get some content there at the beginning for free, even in the premium posts. So first, though, support the Libertarian Institute in our spring fundraiser. You get bonuses like a drawstring bag, a Libertarian Institute coffee mug, and signed books by Scott Horton. So really do appreciate it, you guys. I'm also looking to add a founders level at the Substack level. So for $100 a year, I think what I'm going to do is add a producer credit to anyone who joins at that level to the end of every single episode. And I'm also working on a real membership site for people who want to support my podcast and get newsletter content like that, because I don't necessarily trust Substack, so I'm looking for some alternatives with the same functionality. But anyways, well, thank you guys for everything. I know this is a little bit of an extended mid-roll, but we really are pressing that spring fundraising drive. So if you want to give to that and then sign up for the free Substack at libertyweekly.net/Substack, libertarianinstitute.org/donate is where you can do those things. So those are my two calls to action. Thanks again, you guys. I really do appreciate the fact that you would listen and the fact that you would consider supporting. So thanks. Peace. Yeah, I already went. I mean, we went out to Sam's Club and got some non-perishables, stuff that we're going to use up anyways. But there's some from the last Samsung run that I bought way too many black beans and brown beans. I don't know. And so some of it's like coming up to be expired, and I'm just worried because there's 3 cases of it, and I'm just, yeah. No, I think you're totally right. It's like, it feels like it might have that compounding effect on especially with the last 2 years, and it just feels like, oh man, it feels like being in survival mode for so long. It's just, it's tough.
It's sometimes I catch myself, because again, it's like when it comes to my content, I want to put on a good face. I want to have a good time. I want to make people smile and laugh, and if they learn something or come away with an interesting perspective, then more is the better. But I want them to enjoy their time with me. And maybe even because of that, I catch myself sometimes, because sometimes I'll just, you just kind of feel the weight of the world on your shoulders sometimes, and you start to get a little down, and you can even, think closer to home, think domestic policy, think monetary policy. Like, all of us think that the dollar's going to collapse because they keep printing and spending. Well, obviously, if you knew exactly what date and time that was going to happen, you'd probably be a bajillionaire in the market. But you're not, because we all think it's going to happen. We just don't know when it's going to happen. But, at some point, you just kind of have to live your life. I know.
Right. Yeah.
You and I had talked that Harry Brown talk a little bit earlier, in that if you just kind of operate with the attitude of the state has you, the Leviathan is in control, and you and I don't have a spear big enough to dislodge that thing. But it's all about what's that phrase of not paying so much mind to the things you can't control and paying more attention to the things you can control.
Yeah, the Stoic.
Yeah,
it's a Stoic thing, but it's also from the Bible too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know me, I'm not religious, so I'm gonna say I made that up. So guys, listen, don't worry about the things you can't control. Pay more to that dash Alan Mosley.
Yes.
But seriously, live a fulfilling life and raise your family and do a good job. Like it's the kind of things that all of our dads told us the first time we went and got a part-time job somewhere. Is that it's a really shitty job, but you should do it well, because that's going to reflect and it's the type of things that you look back on. It wasn't about the flipping the burgers when you were 15. It was about being that way now. It was about being that way when you're 25 and 35 and 45 and 55, and then telling your sons and daughters to do the same thing. Yeah. It's about being individually successful. And Harry Brown was a very individually successful guy, and I think he genuinely wanted all of us to be as wealthy and successful as we could be, because no amount of voting or protesting or podcast episodes is going to change the fact that Leviathan owns this world.
Right.
But the closest thing you're going to have to living in that free society is to be as independently, as self-reliant and successful as one can be. And God, I know I don't want to see any more broke libertarians. We want to see successful, happy libertarians. If your success and happiness is tied to who is in office and what policy changes are being made, God, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I have, despite trying to live that out, I have felt the weight, the psychological stress of all this. I mean, especially when you're talking about it. But this is my outlet, it's kind of how I cope.
Sure.
But it's also like, I don't know, what is, it's like you have your hand in the trap, or it's like, when you look so much into the abyss looks back into you. It's call of the void. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is why I have to actually make middle notes. I could show you my show notes from week to week, and I literally have written in my show notes, smile. Don't be such a depressing piece of shit. If you tell a joke, actually laugh, things like that. I actually write those. I mean, it's not just because I'm a sociopath. I swear it isn't. But it's also because I want to be more optimistic. It's such a weird thing that I know that we're living in tough times, and I know a lot of people out there are not having a good go of it right now. I know obviously the pandemic era has taken a toll on a lot of people, and it really sucks, and I'm really sorry. And that makes it that much more difficult to be more optimistic when the world is less optimistic. But I feel like maybe it's just that much more important to put on a good face and to put your best foot forward. It's so weird that even as we sit here now, things are better for me today than they were, say, 6 months ago, and that's a win. Mm-hmm. Take a win where you can get them. There's nothing we can do in the next 6 months that's going to make a free society, but I bet you and I could be better 6 months from now than you and I 6 months before. Yeah.
My dad's a pretty wise guy, and one of the
oh, he's a gangster. That's cool.
Right. No, the moment that came out of my mouth, I was like, that's not the right word. No.
Oh, well, now I understand why you went into law. You're like the consigliere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The Italian stallion. That's my dad.
Okay.
And that's not quite the gangster thing, is it? That's something else.
Now he's a boxer. That's amazing.
He's a boxer.
Oh boy.
Well, he's pretty smart. He's pretty, one thing he told me always was, don't wish your life away, and I am so bad at that. That is me. Oh, once once I graduate from high school, you know, everything will be good then. Okay, well, once I graduate college, everything will be good then. Well, once I graduate law school, everything will be good then. You know, once I've been working and practicing for 4 years, everything will be good then. Or, you know, once my kids are 5 years old and they don't, you know, poop on the floor, that will be really nice.
Once I get out of this fucking interview with Alan, everything will be fine then. Yeah. No, I totally understand. I've been there. You know, I've worn a lot of different hats in a relatively short period of time. Like I'm 36, and I still act like I feel like I still act like a young person. I still feel like a young person. I don't feel limited in any way. I mean, like I know that there's people older than 36. Like, well, yeah, no shit, you're only 36. But I mean, when I was 26, if you had said at 36 X, Y, and Z, I'd have been like, ooh, I don't know, that sounds scary. No, 36 is fine. I feel good. I feel like I'm just getting my stride here at 36. And so I'm, you know, that's just another way that I'm trying to be more optimistic. I feel like things are going to be on the up and up. But I've definitely been there. I've definitely been in the position of, because you're trying to balance between wanting to arrive at a destination and having things to look forward to, right? Like you have your vacation on the calendar and you sit there and boy, I wish it was that day because I'd go on vacation. But I feel like as you get older, you realize, oh, the vacation was fun, but I'd also like to have those couple months back too.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like you start to, I don't know, maybe I'm just becoming a big softy in my old age of 36 years old, but I definitely value the time more. And part of valuing the time more is also valuing the time spent with others and the relationships a lot more than I ever did before. I'm just now reaching a point in my life where I realize why it is my older kin put so much time and effort into family gatherings, when I thought that was just a day wasted in my work week. That for them, it was the greatest day of the year because it was a family reunion. The older I get, the more I realize that I was the idiot. Because I mean, when all of us are young and we think we're going to take over the world and we know everything and everyone else is stupid, I've been there. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. And now that I've gotten just even a little bit older, I realize, God, I was an idiot.
Yeah. I try to have humility on the show. I hope the audience, you know, I think one thing is like when you put yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there, and like you don't always get everything right. And especially with, I've always had this thing with, especially with foreign policy, where it's like, well, I don't know that super duper well. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to be better than the talking heads. But at the same time, it's like, you know, you're kind of grappling. It's like the more intelligent people realize, the more they learn about something, that they have way more to learn.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger. Yeah.
I'm glad that you know what these things are, because I'm like the void, staring into the void, and then the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Well, you'll be Joe Rogan and I'll be Jamie. So you just say stuff and I'll just pull it up.
Okay.
I'll just Google stuff as you're going. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you were sitting there telling me that, the whole time I was thinking, I should ask Patrick, hey, what's the libertarian position on Uyghur genocide?
Did you have me on to talk about that on your did we talk about that on your show?
I don't actually think we did at all.
Yeah.
Well, I think you came on and we didn't discuss it even for 1 second.
Well, Jesus, maybe that's a good thing, because it's like, okay, I decide to look into one thing because I'm watching Tim Pool. And he's talking about like rape gangs in concentration camps. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds a little like out there. I mean, literally when the kernel of the Uyghur genocide issue came into my brain, I was doing a documentary on lies in World War I propaganda. And I'm editing it, and I have Tim Pool on the other screen. And as I'm talking at like researching the Belgian baby with no hands, like nurses getting atrocity stories, Tim Pool is talking about the Uyghur genocide. And I'm like, okay, all right, I got to look into this. And then it turns into this thing where now I'm the guy about this issue in the movement. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I know. That's why I brought it up. I was like, this is going to trigger Patrick. So I could just take the rest of the show off and let you rant about it. Well, it's funny that's how it came about for you because like the analogy was there that you could sort of see the history sort of repeating itself. Yeah. It's that I know that you've made more than a few comments about Tim Pool and how he talks about China and stuff. But isn't it interesting how not just how things like that get propagated, but that they get propagated by people like Tim Pool is not Jen Psaki.
Right.
Like he's his own man. And I mean, I would say that he's not exactly a regime apologist. And yet he's propagating something that I'm sure that they're perfectly happy to have him talking about.
Right.
It's weird how that works out sometimes.
Or even Luke Rudkowski. I mean, Luke is one of us. Mm-hmm. You know, he has swam in the same circles as us. He goes to Anarchapulco, hosts the event, you know. Mm-hmm. The more I looked into it, I don't know, the less charitable that I am to their positions, but yeah, at some point in time, it's like you can't see into the hearts of men.
And then I bet you also run into this. In fact, I know you do. You run into the same us versus them mentality. I saw Michael Bolden from TAC, 10th Amendment Center, talking about this earlier today. Bolden had just tweeted out really simply, George W. Bush won because we've never lived in a time where you're either with us or you're against us was more strong than it is now. Yeah. That is a prevailing societal thought that prevails to this day. And likewise, if you are against starting World War III, then you're pro-Putin, right? There's no middle ground. And I bet you've run into the same thing there too, is that, you know, like I can wholeheartedly understand I can give plenty of examples why the Chinese Communist Party is like one of the most evil organizations to ever exist.
Yeah.
I don't have to make up any.
Right.
They've got plenty. They got plenty of reasons.
Yeah, I always make this analogy too, or it's like, you know, in the months leading up to the war in Iraq, do you really want to be the one talking about how bad of a dictator Saddam Hussein is? I mean, you don't have to make shit up there either, but is it really the best time to be doing that when the empire has him in its crosshairs?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and even then it's that, I mean, it's the whole us versus us, you're either with us or you're against us mentality of when everyone is completely centrally focused on this is the bad guy or this is the evil country, this is the axis of evil, therefore they're in the wrong. Even granting that they're in the wrong on something, which I'm not even making that claim for any particular country, but I'm just saying hypothetically, even if some enemy of America has been identified and they are genuinely in the, you know, just war wrong on some topic or event, I'm willing to bet the United States is not innocent. And that, I would like to think that more people see that's what's so tough, is that when we're not actively engaged in the warmongering, you'll have more people come around to that idea. You'll have more people come around to the concept of, well, man, guys, I don't know. The CIA's done a bunch of shady shit. Look at this. Look at South America. Look at the Middle East. Look at you know, Obama was going to close Guantanamo Bay. It's still open multiple presidencies later. Like, you know, you'll have people find these little nuggets of inspiration and they'll start to come around. But then as soon as the war drums beat, it's like it just all washes away instantly. Yeah. And it's such a, God, it's so demoralizing. I can't imagine, like, I don't work for AntiWar.com or Libertarian Institute, but I can imagine it can be demoralizing. The only example I can give is knowing the guys at TAC. They tell me all the time about how when a left-winger is in office, the right-wingers can't sign up for a membership fast enough. Because they identify your organization with being against the regime. But wouldn't you know, as soon as a right-winger gets in office, they can't cancel their memberships fast enough. Funny. Yeah. But yet what TAC has been writing is the exact same stuff they've been writing for 15 years, 17 years now, I think, at this point. And yet whoever is in office is like a direct -1 correlation of who is signing up for a membership.
I think that right now, like it's covering all this stuff. It feels, it's kind of depressing and it's demoralizing, but at the same time, it's like a calling. It feels like it's a calling where it's like, we got to strike while the iron's hot. I mean, we have to respond to this kind of stuff. And so in that way, it's kind of like jet fuel. I mean, but I hang out with Kyle Anzalone, you know, and Kyle and Will Porter, they're just pumping stuff out. So, and then
we're finally going to learn if jet fuel melts steel beams. Steel beams. It's going to be, yeah.
I haven't talked about 9/11 for a long time on this show. You'd get me in trouble, Alan.
Oh no! Oh, okay, my bad.
No.
Okay, no, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
I mean, you're talking to me. I'm the guy who just this last week's episode, I talked about the whole swimmer Leah Thomas thing, and of course I call him Will, and I call him a man, and
yeah,
and I still use forbidden words, like I still call people retarded and faggot.
Have you been canceled from Stripe or PayPal?
I haven't been canceled. I just get shadow banned everywhere.
Yeah.
So I tell people I have said some pretty out there stuff, like not like I'm not Alex Jones, but I'll usually say things just purposely to be funny more than to make a point.
Yeah.
And I don't ever get canceled. No, what happens to me is that I'll give you a perfect example. So on Facebook, way back in the day, like 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, we had Ron Paul on the show. And that I think that episode got something like 60,000 views. And it was like, whoa, that's awesome. Of course, you can't have Ron Paul every week, you know.
Right.
But it was great. And then not long after that, we had our episode 100. And it actually got about 5,000 views more than the Ron Paul episode. And I thought, well, maybe we have some audience retention there.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, we did an episode, ironically enough, since I'm talking to you, it was about that they did that live action remake of the movie Mulan. Disney did, and they remember how Disney thanked.
Yeah,
like I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
A week after that, we have never. Basically, we went from having episodes that were getting 50 to 60,000 down to sometimes now we have episodes that are in the double digits.
Mm-hmm.
So either you're telling me that my show is 99% worse than it was, or something happened that's beyond my control.
Yeah, sometimes I do wonder about that, man. Like, you would think that, I mean, the behind the scenes throttling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what I really like Odyssey, because I feel like it gives me a better indication of how I'm really doing. Whereas, like, I think in a year and a half, I was able to gain almost the same amount of subs that I've gotten on YouTube in 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Odyssey is a smaller, pool.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I really like what Odyssey is doing. I think that I definitely think they're doing everything the right way. It's just a matter of continuing to build a platform that is, from a technical standpoint, attractive enough to get your kind of mainstream normie audience to move over. And I mean, we were talking earlier about casting a wider net.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people out there that don't like a lot of the things we don't like. The trick is figuring out what things we can say and do that are like positive affirmations, like finding things that we both do like to come together on. Because I feel like, I know that this might run counter to like the whole idea of an AntiWar.com, but I feel like bringing people together on things that they mutually dislike, I feel like is a short-term answer. Mm-hmm. Bringing people together on things they both mutually enjoy is a long-term answer. If we're both against Mitt Romney, and we have nothing else in common other than we're both against Mitt Romney, then we can absolutely come together on that. But Mitt Romney's going to not be around forever. I mean, he's already not going to be running again, most likely, or now he's just hiding in Utah where he belongs. And so it's like, so now we know, so that connection effectively has been severed because the war is won. It's over. Mitt Romney's gone, and we moved on. Now, granted, unfortunately, antiwar.com has to still exist because we still have global strife.
Right.
So maybe that's not the best analogy, but you see what I mean. That if we're both Vikings fans, then we can get together every weekend during NFL season and watch the Vikings and enjoy it immensely. But it's hard to get people to come together every week because we both don't like something.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough to, if someone comes in the door because you're talking about something that you don't like and they also don't like it, how do you keep them in the door? By finding things that you both like. It's tough. It's a big world out there. There's a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions. And most of them, the overwhelming majority, are not going to be hardcore principled anything, much less hardcore principled libertarians. And that's something I try to remind people too, is that if you're restricting your audience to a hardcore principled libertarian, not only is that a very small audience, but most people aren't really hardcore principled anything. I made people mad a couple of years ago. I did a whole series of episodes where I was talking about most people don't have principles at all. Mm-hmm. And everyone got, harumph. Alan, you're just because I don't agree with you don't mean I don't have principles. I have principles. I'm like, no, you don't. A lot of people think they do, but having principles actually takes a little bit of effort and commitment, and quite often it incurs a cost.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, I use another recent pandemic example. I never wore a mask. Never once. Everyone has to draw their line in the sand somewhere, and I'm not judging you or anybody else for having your line in a different place than mine, although I would judge you if you had no line at all. Then I would judge you. But everyone has to draw their line somewhere, and I drew my line right. I was like, I'm not putting on a mask. You can just arrest me. I'm not putting one on. And I made it that whole period of time. Now, granted, I don't live in New York City or San Francisco, California, thank fucking God, but I mean, there were still lockdowns and a few months of bullshit down here in Tennessee.
Yep.
And I had said, I'm not going to do it. And that incurred a cost on me. But I was willing to pay it to make it happen. Most people might have preferences, but they're not willing to incur a cost. And that's the difference between a preference and a principle. A principle, you're willing to incur a cost.
I did have a line, but I did wear a mask a few times. Yeah,
oh, you're a commie piece of shit. Yeah,
I'm not as OG as you, Alan. Hey, I wore a mask on the airplane to go to the Ron Paul conference.
Well, I mean, he's a statist. I mean, he was in Congress, for God's sakes.
Right.
So,
and he voted for the AUMF, didn't he?
Oh, oh God, yeah. So, Gulag. That's the only answer.
Helicopter.
I'll make sure you and Ron are in the same one if it makes you feel any better.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean it though. Like I know we're having a good time. Sometimes I worry if people listen and they don't get that we're joking around. But I mean it though, in that I judge you less for your line being different than where mine is than if you don't have one. That you never actually, like, if you're like, I know you're a young man and you've got a young family. I'm sure that you've had a conversation, you sit down in the living room and you say, like, where's our line? Like, if they come for our kids, is that where it's like, that's it? It's lock and load. That's the line. What's the line? I talked to a lot of parents who had said, I'll go through anything I have to go through to provide for my family. But if they knock on my door with a syringe asking where my kids are, that's it. I'm shooting them in the face. And I'm like, hey, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you 100%. It's so important to have the line somewhere. So while you might obviously be a communist compared to me because your line is further out than mine, I admire people for having had the conversation.
Well, here's the flip side, the cost though, Alan. I went around and I gave these COVID speeches. I got in like a few verbal altercations with people. And I got kicked out of a public defender conference because I wouldn't wear a fucking mask it was in February. It was in February that they were requiring it. Yeah.
Just be broke like me, Patrick.
Yeah.
Just don't have a career. Just go bankrupt.
It was a public defender conference, so it wasn't like, the National Trial Lawyers Association or anything.
Well, I'll give you one more quick example. Everything turned out okay, but I had a friend who worked for Siemens for the health and ears, health technology or whatever. And of course, their corporate offices are in Germany, but they have offices in Chicago, Knoxville, a bunch of different places. And so there was a lot of conversation about from a legal standpoint. You're the blood-soaking lawyer, so you know more about this than me. Yeah. There was a lot of legal conversation of, well, if the German office says we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but the employee works in an office that's on the ground in, say, Tennessee, and Tennessee law is X, who wins out? Like, can you force an employee to do something that is against the law? Like my general interpretation is that if I own a business and my business is going to operate a location in another country, I have to obey their laws. If my business is going to operate in their country,
right.
not tell my employees there, they have to do what I say that goes against their laws. But there was there was a lot of conversation there about vax mandates and whether or not the employers shoulda, woulda, coulda, and the whole Biden 100 employee and up stuff and going to the Supreme Court and everything. And Siemens, of course, there's a certain irony of the fact that Siemens is a German company, and actually they were super hardcore fascist about that. They totally didn't get the irony at all as a German company that they were telling everybody, you will take the jab, you will eat the bugs, you will live in the pod. Anyway, they ended up, after lots of deliberation and pushback, they ultimately decided to allow exemptions. They originally were saying no exemptions for anyone. You're fired on this date. Yeah. And that date came and went, and they didn't fire anybody. And so like that, obviously that was kind of the first red flag of obviously they're still deliberating it, Yeah. And everything worked out, and my friend was able to keep his job without taking the jab. But he had told me in confidence, like, if my manager calls me tomorrow and says you're fired if you don't get the jab today, I got to go do it, because I can't just I'll take it so that my family doesn't suffer. Yeah. And I was like, man, I obviously understand. Like, at that point, you're incurring a different kind of a cost, because you're incurring the cost so that they can continue to live a certain way.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It really is. Not everyone is in a position where they can just drop what they're doing, sell what they have, move to a different place, vote with their feet. Like, it's all the type of flowery language that we love. And I've said those words, and I've preached that shit. I've talked that shit before. But I guess that maybe is the difference between us and some of our favorite people in the post-libertarian world. I'm sorry, I had to bring it up for a second. The difference between us and them is I try to be more sympathetic to people, that while I wish things had worked out better for you, while I wish you would never have to compromise on something, I understand as a human being that you're thinking about more than just yourself. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about your kids. You're thinking about your future. And, it's a lot more, we're not all in a position of, oh, Florida's better than Michigan. Well, just move to Florida. Okay, you sound right. Like Pete Buttigieg, right? Like, you saying New York is bad, just move to Florida. That's the same thing as saying gas is expensive, just buy an electric vehicle. It's the same energy, just different words.
Right.
So while I can believe that from a principled standpoint, I don't want people to feel like you and I can't, enjoy this community together because we have a different line in the sand in a different place.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I was in a situation where the HR manager at my former employer, before I went out on my own, they were asking for vax status, and I did not answer. I got a few follow-up emails, and then I stopped working there. So
yeah, well, good for you. I mean, I would have accepted you mailing them back an envelope with anthrax, but we'll go with termination. That's fine.
Well, there were some other things too. So it wasn't just that. It wasn't just. I'm not saying that I got fired because of it. There were other things too, but
no, you got fired for all the hookers. I know how you lawyers are, but
the company card,
yeah. You got to take care of the clients, man.
I need a Fredo instead of my own.
In my personal headcanon, your position at your old firm was you were the young guy that took the clients out on the town, got steaks, went to the strip club, all that good stuff. That was your job.
Yeah.
Am I in the ballpark? Pretty close?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there's not much to do at a personal injury firm. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I'll wheel in the old lady in the wheelchair, Well, Alan, it's too late. So where can people find your show?
They can go. So all the old old platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all those are that / Alan Mosley TV. Twitter's Alan Mosley TV, YouTube Alan Mosley TV, Facebook Alan Mosley TV. On Odyssey, you have to search It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. We're also you can get us on all your podcasting platforms of choice. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, I'm glad that we were able to do this, and I'll try and link to my appearance on your show so people can start there.
Oh, I'm deleting it once we're done.
Okay.
As soon as I found out you were a masker, it's already out.
All right. Okay. All right. Well,
Patrick, I'm gonna have you back in the future, and I'll just treat you the way I treat Scott. As I'll say, so how about them concentration camps? And you just take all the time you need.
All right. Do you have a few hours? Actually, I don't know if I can come back because I think the lovely Sherry Voluntary is not with you anymore. Is that right? Or
yeah, no, she's been gone since like October of last year. Yeah.
Do you know if she's coming to Childerberg at all? Are you can't make it to Childerberg, can you?
No, I won't. I mean, I do my own thing. We've got the 4th annual It's Too Late live show coming up on June 4th, right here just south of Nashville in Middle Tennessee. So it's the 4th annual. Believe it or not, we're actually doing this a 4th time. It's kind of scary. We used to do a live show with a live studio audience every 50 episodes, and this year we decided instead of it being for episode 200, we would do it in June because by the time June gets here in Tennessee, it'll be 90 degrees and sweltering and lovely.
Yeah.
And so we're inviting everybody. I've got a link. Everyone come to the 4th annual It's Too Late live show. We're already on pace for it to be far and away the biggest, most well-attended event we've ever had. Probably will have a few less people than the 2,500 that showed up for Tom Woods for like his 2,000th, but maybe a few less than that.
Wait, who?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah. Some T Woods. It's like a Taylor Swift kind of a thing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But yeah, you should. That's where you need to go, man. You need to hop in your car and bring yourself down to the South, where you'll once you hear the banjos, you'll know you're almost to the event location.
Yeah.
And then and we'll have a great time. And even the last selling point there is that while there will be a lot of libertarians and anarchists there, it's really just a family reunion. It really is. We really just we spend most of the day just hanging out, enjoying food, enjoying company, having a great time. And then just to ruin everyone's fun, we do a live taping of It's Too Late.
Okay, so you just transitioned from a joke about hearing the banjos, and then you say it's a family reunion?
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, it is the South, Patrick.
Yeah, okay. All right, man. Well, I'm glad we brought that up so you can plug the 4th annual.
Yeah, 4th annual It's Too Late live show. You have to get your tickets. I mean, your $10 ticket is getting you like infinity barbecue and banana pudding. And then of course you get to see me. And I'm happy to announce this year all the proceeds from tickets from the 4th annual It's Too Late live show are going to go to me.
Okay. Well, that's a good place to end it. All right. Well, Alan, thanks for coming on, man.
I appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you.